Hey, what's up, everybody? So, today we are going to actually start implementing the logic for logging in a Google user. And registration and login pretty much work the same from what I can tell. So, there's not a lot of crazy code. But for now, all we're going to work on is being able to either create a new Google user and log them in, or log in a new Google user. We're not setting up account linking right now or anything else. That's a little bit of a complicated shorter check and stuff like that. And so that's another video. But for now, I wanted to go ahead and give you guys a taste of it, let you guys see how Passport works with handling, OAuth. And if you guys want to make your own implementations of account linking or anything like that, you'll have everything you need. You just, look, there's several different ways to do it. I'm just trying to pick one that works for, with yelpCamp. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we need to do is we need to install a passport module. So passport, I think it's Google oAuth2. So we'll install that. And then in the utils folder, we're going to create a file called passport. And in here, we're going to bring in passport. We're also going to bring in the Google strategy. Then we're going to bring in a user. I don't think we even need a user, right? Yeah, we will. And then we're going to bring in a file that we haven't created yet, but we're just going to go ahead and work through all of it. So all right. All right. So we're going to create a function called passport-init, and we're going to call app. So once we put this into app.js, we can just reference back to app, so that way app.use, all this stuff still works. So what we're going to do is app.use, and then we're going to do passport initialize, and then passport.session, and then passport.use, and then user create strategy. All right, so under that, we'll do passport.use, new Google strategy. Oh, I did something weird here. So new Google strategy. There we go. So the client ID is going to be process.env.google client ID. All right. So we've got three things so far. We've got the client ID, we've got the client secret, we've got the callback URL. So in the first video, when I showed you guys how to go ahead and set up the Google Dev Console and get your OAuth keys, and I created an example file. These should be all of the environment variable files or names that you've got. So you add the Google Client ID and put that in, your client secret, put that in, and the callback URL is just going to be http://localhost:3000. And if you put this in any production server or you put it on Heroku, just make sure you set this callback URL to the initial part of the URL, and that way your callback will work. So we've got these set up, and then the last one is pass rec to callback, and we're going to set that to true. That way we have access to like rec sessions, rec user, things like that from the Google strategy. So after that, what we're going to do now is we're going to call auth user. Now that's that file that we haven't created yet, but we're getting to it. So underneath of here, let's see which one is it. It's going to be passport.use. It's this here. So we're going to call passport.serializeUser. And here we'll call user and done. And then done, null, and then user. All right. So for serialized and deserialized user, usually on deserialized user, there's like a user.find and goes through all this stuff like that. It works either way. I'm not as 100% sure if there's a specific reason why they call user first and within this function come down. I'll test it out. I think I had some issues with it where it wasn't wanting to because of using two different strategies. I don't think it was because user is linked. That's why it is because I'm not within the user model. I'm not linking Google to it. Google has their own. So that's why I'm just calling done null user instead of actually user, and then you find it and then you deserialize the user, return it, and come back. So this works either way. It still generates a session, it still generates rec user, it still does everything it needs to do. If there is a better way of doing this, I'll definitely post an update. So we've got that, and then if we go into, now that that's there, if we go into app.js, and if we come up here, and we can just do it down here. So const underscore passport. The reason why I put the underscore there is because there's already a module called passport, and because this is a helper or a util file, I'll generally put like an underscore there. That way I know what it is. So here, if we come down to where we're calling passport, so all of this right here, so we do underscore passport and then call the function passport.net and then pass app back into it. So with doing that, now up here we can get rid of these three because we no longer need them. And then now we're going to create the user model for Google, so we can close this out. And you're going to get an error. It's going to say it can't find. Where's it at? Yeah, it can't find the oAuth file, so that's fine. We haven't got to that point yet. So Google user.js, and then here we're going to call them mongoose. Then we're going to get the schema. Okay, so we're going to create a Google user schema, and then the Google ID is going to be a string. If I could type it right. So Google ID is a string. Token is going to be a string. Email is a string. And picture is a string. Now, in the first video I was talking about scopes. So you got email and you got profile, or everything. The token and the email are tokens coming from the oAuth. Email's your email, obviously, and then your profile is going to be your first name, last name, picture, and there's a few other things. Like I said, you can console log it. You can see what all it returns. And if you want to add more to it, you can. If you only want just the email and maybe their profile picture, you can set this up however you want to. This is just the way that I am doing it. Let's see, Google user, and then Google user schema. So that'll set up the model file. And now we are going to make the oAuth file. So back in utils, we'll create a new file called oAuth.js. And here we are going to bring in just a Google user, I believe. All right. So all right, so we're creating that function auth user that, if you look back on the passport file, it calls, oauth.auth user. So we're creating that, and with us having the pass rec to callback, we're going to use rec. We're going to have the access token, the refresh token, the profile, and done. Refresh token we're not going to use in this, but it's there. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to write this in a try catch. Actually, it's error first, and then null. Alright, so within here, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look to make sure that the user is not logged in at all. So from the local account or from the Google account. So if rec.user does not exist, alright, so first thing we're going to do is we are going to look for a Google user in the database that has the profile ID. And if they do not have one, then we'll create a new user. If they do have one, which is going to be here, so if Google user, what we're going to do here is we're just going to do return, done, null, and Google user. And that's it. Down below this one, if there is no user, what we're going to do is we're going to create new Google user equals new Google user. We're going to hard set everything in. So Google ID is profile.id. Token is going to be access token. So email is profile.email. So we got first name and last name. So you're pulling up from the profile. It's your given name and your family name. And the picture is literally just profile.picture. So await new Google user dot save. So we're going to save it to the database. And then return, done, null because there's no errors, and then new Google user. And that's it for that one. So we're going to run else here just to make sure it catches. If the user is logged in, whether it's through a local account or through a Google account, and they try to do this again, it's going to just return an error, and it's going to have a flash message on it that says you've already logged in. So kind of like middleware. So return done, null, false, because we're not returning back a user or anything with this. And then rec.flash. It just says you're already logged in. So that's that. So now that we've created this oAuth file, Passport's able to find it and it's loading up. We don't have any issues with it. So we no longer have any error messages coming up. So now what we're going to do is we are going to close this out. We're going to go into our controllers and we're going to create an oAuth file. And here we are going to call in passport. So it's exports Google login equals await. Oh, yeah, never mind. It's async. Don't know why I put a wait there. Let's see. We don't even need an async function here. I don't know. I put it there because I'm not 100% sure if passport is asynchronous or not. I think it is with some of the newer updates. I think the doc said it was. So just in case we have to await it for anything, but for now, we're not. So passport authenticate Google. This might look familiar. So here, we're just loading the scope. And outside of this, we'll call recres next. And then, let's see. The next one is going to be Google login, or no, I'm sorry, Google register or login. If I'm not mistaken, I made this one async as well. And a lot of times what I'll end up doing is even if it's not going to be an async function, if I have to come back and update it and I end up using await, I'll just go ahead and put async in there because it's not going to make a difference whether you use await or not. But it's just there that way if you forget to put it and you end up getting an error saying await can only run inside of an async function, we've already got the function created. It might be bad practice, but that's, for a lot of the smaller apps that I build out, this is what I end up doing anyway. So for now, we're going to basically set up the route and the controller the same way for local. So here we'll just do const so was it return to. Alright, so we've got these set up. We can save this. And then we're going to create the route file. So in routes, we'll create one called oAuth just as well. And here, bring in express. We're going to set up router. We're going to do catch async, and then do the oAuth controller equals require oAuth, and then we're going to need passport as well. So const passport equals require Alright, so and this one is going to be load Google login. This one's going to be Google callback. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to come here, enter this down, here, enter this one down, bring that over there, passport.authenticate. This one's going to be Google. So failure redirect, we're going to just for now send them back to campgrounds. I'll show you why in a second. So failure flash is going to be true, and success flash is going to be true. Alright, so now that that one is done, we need to go into app.js, and just below review routes we can bring in oAuth routes. For oAuth, and then we come down here where we're using these, and then we'll do app.use we'll call auth, and then oAuth routes. Okay. Where are we missing something at? Oh, I know where that's at. Let's see. You'll go back to routes for oAuth. No, it's there. Alright, let me pause it and figure out what's going on. I'll come right back. Okay, so two things. I completely missed this step. So module.exports equals router. So that fixes that on the oAuth.js route. Okay. And also, in the same file where we did the passport and authenticate, put a comma below that and then do the catch async oAuth controller Google register login. And then that fixes that. So, I'll pull up database here. I was testing out linking, that's why there's a user link and everything, but it wasn't wanting to. It works, but it was doing something weird. So anyway, I'm going to delete the Google user altogether. I've got a local user account here, so I'm going to shrink this down, come over here, and so if I log in with my local login, everything works fine. I log out. So now I'm just back here, and if I go to auth Google, it's going to load up and it's going to bring up anything that you're logged into with Google. So I'm going to select my account, and there you go. It says welcome back Google user. We now have the logout button. So rec user exists. If we go to the database and we look, and we go to Google users and we hit refresh, you know, we already have this one here. I forgot I deleted it out already, so yeah, when I clicked on it, it's going to load up the new one. So we've got the Google ID, we've got the token that they gave us, we've got the email, first name, last name, and we have the profile picture that you assign to your profile in Google. So if, like I said, if you want to add more to it, you can look and see what all it passes back. If all you want's their ID, the token, and the email address, you can just go with that. The possibilities are endless. So anyway, we can log out. We can log back in with our local user, and for now, because linking isn't there, if we make it to this point, it's just going to tell you that you're already logged in, and it's just going to send you back to campgrounds. The reason why I'm sending it back to campgrounds is because if we come over here to the route file and the failure redirect, if I set that back to login, which technically is what it should be, login, register, or whatever, then even on, for right now, because of the way I've got it, we're not doing account linking. If they try, it's gonna put them back to the login page. And if we have middleware set up that checks to see if they're logged in, it shouldn't even load that page. So you're just gonna bounce them around on a bunch of errors. So for now, just to play it safe, I've got them going back to campgrounds. It's as easy as, they can click back. If they're already logged in, there's no point doing it to begin with, so they have no reason to log in, or so they come back to this page and everything's fine. Once we get to the whole linking process, I'm trying to handle it a little differently, and that way I'm not having to constantly log in or log out a user to create another session and do it. That might be how it has to happen. So we'll see. So yeah, that's that. The only thing we got left to do now is we're gonna redo this a little bit. I'm actually going to widen this out some. So if you go, we can close all this out. We don't need any of this anymore. And so I'm going to go into views. I'm going to go into users. I'm going to go into login. Actually, I'm going to go into register because that's where we're going to have the most buttons at. So I'm just going to get rid of the column extra larges. So now if we go back over here and we click on this, that's on login. Let's go to register. It's a little bit wider, and all we've got now is the register button. So what we're going to do is I'm going to pull up my notes here and see what changes I need to make. Alright, so I did this completely backwards, I'm sorry. So we can actually leave the register page alone as far as the size. And then down here underneath the register button, we're going to call button.btn primary, give it a margin top of 1. The href is going to be /auth/Google, and then here it's login with Google. So login with the Googles. Alright, so anyway, if we click on this, it brings them back to the page. I click on this, they're logged in. They go to register, they can register with Google. So let's actually change that to register with Google. That way we're on the register page, so that makes more sense. Now the login page, that's the one we need to make some adjustments on. So login here, I'm going to make this one a little bit wider. So that's the one we're going to get rid of with the columns. So on login, it's a little bit wider, and you can actually add some margin. Let's see. I'll just go ahead and add a lot of margin to the bottom of this. That way it's not hugging up right against the bottom of the footer. So here in the login page, we are going to create a where these buttons are at. Let's see, I've got this one right here, I've got this one here. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a class called button wrapper. So it's going to be we can copy this one, and then we're going to create which one is this one? It's another button primary. So a.btn.btn primary. This one is also going to go to auth Google. This one, because we're on the login page, login with Google. And then we're going to grab this button here. And we're going to grab this button here. You can cut it or paste it out. It doesn't matter because we're going to get rid of that other part anyway. So these right here we can get rid of. We'll get rid of all this extra space. And right now, if we refresh this and we do this, it doesn't look too terribly bad on widescreen like this. But because we're not doing any type of styling, there's no flex or grid or anything like that to it, it's just going to look bad. And flex just wraps, so then the buttons just look really funny. So what we're going to do is we are going to create a little bit of CSS. So we can close this out. We don't need it anymore. So if we go to public, style sheets, app.css, come down here to the bottom, and then do button wrapper, and then we're going to use a grid for this one. Grid template columns. We're going to do repeat to, and one fractional unit. That way they're the same size. And we're going to give it a gap of 0.5 rem. So now if we refresh, now our buttons are kind of spaced out evenly. They're sitting just like this. The only downside to this is when you go to mobile, they get squished up. So underneath button wrapper, all we're going to do here is button wrapper and then grid template columns. We're just going to change that to 1FR. There's already gaps set from here, so we don't need to do any changing with spacing. But what's going to happen is if I go over here and go to inspect and I make this a little smaller, once we get to 992 pixels, I didn't refresh. That might help if I did that. Once we get to 992 pixels, they just stack. That way it didn't look like it did a little while ago where the letters had to wrap below it and it made the buttons really big and everything else. So that is it, I do believe. Yeah, that's it. So if you go to login, you've got your login page. If you log in with Google, like I said, it all works the same. Even if you need to go to the register and you've already registered with an account with Google, I'm thinking because that might be where the access token and refresh token come in. I'm not 100% sure. From what I can tell, they look the same on what gets returned back. So I'm gonna do some more digging in to make this, if there's a way to make it a little more secure. Because right now, even on the register screen, if you've already got a Google account with us and you click on register with Google, and it's just gonna log them in. It's not recreating a new user. It's not doing anything crazy. It's just literally just because we're looking to see if they exist, and if they do, we just go ahead and log them in anyway. So anyway, sorry it took so long to get this video out. I know I've been talking about it for quite a while. It's just been really hectic. But yeah, so hopefully within the next week or two, I'll be able to work on um, account linking and everything. So, but I've also got another project I'm working on as well that I'm trying to get done. I'll actually be making a video on it. It won't be related to yelpCamp, but you can use it for pretty much anything. And it's an email verification service with a site called Kickbox, and they actually have a really good API. And so I'm going to create a little small tutorial on how to use Kickbox to validate someone's email, and it kind of skips a lot of the whole validation processes and everything else, and it checks for bot accounts and things like that. So anyway, that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions, just let me know. Thanks.